Good evening and welcome to True Encounters. I'm your host, Marvin Allen. First of all, I would like to apologize to all my listeners because I haven't been uploading no videos. Um, like I told y'all, my laptop was broke and I've been doing it off my phone. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into a couple of new encounters. This first encounter happened in southern Missouri. Now, this guy Nick say he went up there to go hunting near Little Creek Rivers. And he said that he was on a large stretch of land. And he said that the land that he was on, it had a wide ridge between the rivers. And he said after being there for a few minutes, he didn't see anything. Then he said he started to get this strange feeling, like something was watching him. So he headed back to the cabin. So when he got back to the cabin, went in, put his guns and stuff up, went back on the porch, and he had a cigarette. So he said while he was on the front porch smoking his cigarette, he said it got dead quiet. He said he couldn't hear nothing. And he thought that was strange that he couldn't hear none of the night animals. So he goes back in the house, he eat. Later on, he headed upstairs, to go to sleep. So he said at about 1:30, he heard a knock at the door. So he sat up in his bed, thinking that he was dreaming. So he didn't pay no attention. He laid back down. So about 10 minutes go past. He heard this knock again. That's when he got up. He looked out the window, but he couldn't see nothing because of the porch roof. So got up, he went downstairs, and he peeped through the peephole. And when he looked through the peephole, still didn't see anything. So he just looking, but he don't see nothing. So all of a sudden, to the left at the peephole, that's when he heard some footsteps on the front porch. But they didn't come all the way down to where the door was. Took a few steps and it stopped. But he said he couldn't see this thing yet. Then he waited a few seconds. Said that's when this thing came. Stood in front of the door. And it started to try to open the door. That's when he backed up from the door. Now, mind you, he didn't look at the peephole no more, but he backed up. So when he backed up, he watching this thing turn the knob, whatever it was. So then it stopped. He said then he can hear this thing take some steps to the left. And it stood there. Then he went to the peephole. That's when he saw this dark figure that looked like a wolf standing on 2 feet. He said this thing had some long arms. It had a giant head, pointy ears. He said this thing had hands and it had bent back legs. He said now he watching this creature through this peephole. He said so as he watching this creature through the peephole, he says he backs up again because this creature's coming back towards the door. He said when this creature came back towards the door, it tried to knob again. He said he grabbed his assault rifle, stood about 10 feet back from the door because he don't know if this thing gonna get in or not. He said and after a few seconds, this thing stopped turning the knob. He said then he watched this thing's shadow walk across the window, jump down off of the porch. Then he walks to the front of the curtain. He looks out the corner of the curtain. He see this thing at the corner of the house. He said then this thing walked across the yard. And when it walked across the yard, it stopped and it looked back at him. Now he looking at this thing out the corner of his window. He said he never seen nothing like this in his life. So he watching this thing, and this thing just showed his teeth. He said then this thing turned around and it walked up in the tree line. Now that was just a small sighting that, I wanted to hurry up and get y'all. And I'm gonna go on to this next encounter. Now, this next encounter, this lady wouldn't give me her location, but she did share her encounter with me. She said one day her and her son decided to go for a walk. Now, she said not far from their house is a trail that they used to walk all the time. So the trail was about 1.5 miles from my house. So they walks down there. And when they get to the trail, they walks up in this trail. And they say about 20 feet in front of them, they see this couple. And the lady was arguing with the guy. And she was telling the guy, come on, let's go. I don't want to be here. So the lady asked, she said, is everything all right? She just grabbed her husband's hand and said, come on, let's go now. So they left, and she's standing there saying that's strange. So her and her son continued to keep walking. So after they walked for about 15 minutes, they came upon a few deers about 45 feet to the right up in the tree line. So they watching these deers. All of a sudden, her son said, Ma, do you smell that? Something stinks. So her mother said, yeah, I smell it too. Then they turned to look at these deers, and she said the deers shot straight up the ridge up in the tree line. So that's when she told her son to start walking back down the trail. So she said before she got ready to turn around, she heard something growling to the left about 30 feet up in the tree line on the left-hand side. She said she seen this black figure that looked like a dog. And this dog, it was on all fours. She said then this thing started to sniff the air. Now, mind you, her son is going back down the trail. She's looking at this thing. So she said when this thing started to sniff the air, she started to walk backwards down the trail. So she said as she's walking backwards, she said this thing stood up. She said, and when this thing stood up, she said this thing was huge. She said this thing started walking towards her, but she's still walking backwards. She said this thing had a giant head. It had long arms. She said this thing had hands. She said this thing had hair like it was over its shoulders, like a mane, like a lion would have. So she said as she's walking, she said she hears somebody call her from around the trail. And when she looked back, it was the couple with a ranger. So the couple came up there and the ranger asked her, Miss, are you all right? So she said, yeah, I'm all right. Why? Why you ask? She said, because the lady said that they saw a giant wolf up here. Have you seen anything? So she said, no, I ain't seen nothing but there's me and my son. So they all leave. They walks back to the main road. The ranger leaves, and the lady asks her, she says, why didn't you tell him what you saw? She said, for what? For him not to believe me? For him to think I'm crazy? I'd rather keep this to myself. I don't even want to tell nobody what I saw. I know one thing, I'm not walking these woods no more. So they left, went home. And when she got home, she was talking to her son and she was telling him, say, look, that thing that was in the woods, I don't know what it was, but I don't want you going nowhere near them woods. We not even walking them no more. So that was her encounter. So I'm going to get into another encounter. And this encounter happened in West Virginia, Point Pleasant. Lady said she was sitting on her front porch. Now, on her front porch, she can see, from her house, she can see, the train tracks. And then it's some woods. But she said she's sitting on her front porch. Now, the way her front porch was made, she told me, she said it was cased in, it was, it had walls around it. But she was sitting there looking out a window. She said, so while she's sitting there and she looking out this window, she said she sees some movement near the train tracks. So she looking. So she said she see this thing come up out of the tree line near the train track and stands right there by the train tracks. And then it walks down, like down this little ridge. But she's still looking over there. She's still watching this thing. She said then this thing came up and it crossed the train tracks on the other side near her house. She said this thing looked like a giant dog and it had a head of a German shepherd. Now this thing is looking at her and she's looking at it. So this thing starts to growl. She said when this thing growled, she said she stood up and started walking backwards, but she's still looking out this window. She said that's when this thing came over into her yard. She said when this thing came over to her yard, she broke in the house. She goes in the house. She said so while she in the house, she's looking out her window, out the front window, onto her porch. She said when she looks out on her porch, she said that this thing opened her screen door and came on her porch. And when it came on her porch, it tried to get in her house. She was scared. She said she didn't want to call the police or nothing like that. So she watching this creature try to get in her house. She said so after about 30 seconds, she guessed this creature got bored or whatever. So it left off the porch, went down in the yard, crossed over on the train tracks, and then it went down. It went down on the other side, down this little ridge. And that was the last time that she saw this thing. Now, that was another short encounter too right there. So I just wanted to bring y'all a few and hope y'all like them. Share your feedback and I'm going to give y'all some more. Thank you.